Iran would be a troublemaker, and that fast forwarding to the prophecy that I just mentioned, just a couple weeks ago, God said that Iran would act up and would cause there to be incredible tension, and that we were not to be diverted, but we were to continue to focus on the Lord and continue to stay in an attitude of prayer and really begin to attack the spiritual forces that are trying to bring our country and our people into war. But here's what we really have to understand when it comes to what happened with soldiers. First and foremost, this is a serious issue because two things. To me, it's an act of war when Iran just did what they did. Second, when it comes to soldiers, they have fought through the history of our great country. They have defended our country. They've shed their blood and they've died. America needs to stand together, and they need to stand together with our brave warriors. But here's the real deal that I think, and that's this fake administration, they have funded a lot of these countries, including Iran. And it's no wonder that they're being able to retaliate or to come against us in the manner that they are. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think that Rick spoke something very wisely. I don't think we get caught up in what Iran wants. Iran wants war. Iran wants to see just how weak we are. They want to see, what our response is going to be. But I do believe that there's a wisdom right now of a restraint. And I'm not saying that we don't defend the soldiers. I'm saying don't fall into the traps right now. We have a very weak administration, and it's not time to engage in the kind of battle that they're wanting.
Let me go to, I think we've got Jesse Duplantis audio. Welcome to the show again. Sir, glad to have you here. Where, though, do we draw the line and not just... Are we spitting in the face of all those that have gone before us if we don't retaliate?
Well, let me just say this. We have a weak president, but we don't have a weak country. They say you got to understand that. We got a military that do things. And I love Brother Green, I love Brother Kuhlman, but let me tell you something. You slap a bully. If you want to get something done, people are going to war. The war ain't going to last. It would last no more than 20 minutes. You go in there, you just take that stuff out. Now, I know people say that's called World War III. No, it's not. No, it's not. See, that's all talk and gibberish. Because you see, if it's World War III with nuclear stuff, nobody wins. China ain't going to do this. Neither is Russia. You see what I'm saying? Because they all die. See, so that's what you got to do. In my personal opinion, and I love you guys, and I understand what you're saying is, but I mean, when you lived on the streets like I live on the street, and somebody comes to take your territory, or they try to hurt one of you guys, you do what you got to do. And let me tell you something. You can shut it down real quickly. Like the Hutus, I mean, we know where they are. We just take them. So how many more soldiers are we going to die? How many more of these people? Yeah. I mean, how many American lives have to die before you decide to say enough is enough? Now, I'm not going in and talking about bombing Tehran, and I'm not saying that, but you can get them people's attention. You can have them running in the desert. We have a weak president, but we don't have a weak country. And that's what we need to do, is stand up and do what we have to do. And I know that sounds hard. I don't like war. I hate it.
Sure,
but I made up my mind. And you mess with me, I don't care how big the guy is, you just get a bigger baseball bat. You see what I'm saying? And you do what you have to do. But that's my opinion, and if you don't like it, throw it out. But I tell you one thing, if they come to New Orleans and try to get me, a fight, they want to fight? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Who cares if I get hurt? Who cares if I bleed? It doesn't make any difference, you see. It's just who bleeds the most. Yeah. Now, that's where you find it. See, and I understand what people are saying. We're not going to create World War III. That's all a bunch of gibberish, because they know this kind of war, nobody wins, and they're not going to do that kind of stuff. One nuclear bomb drop will shut it all down. And I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. But when these people, they're like mosquitoes. They just, you see, and what you do is you get your fly swatter and you knock them out. And I'm not talking about taking the whole country out. That's some good people. But I'm talking about these people that are crazy. So, to defeat your enemy, you got to think like him. And if you think like him, you can defeat him.
All right, Pastor Hank, I see you with your hands
Pastor Jim. Yeah, well, I want to clarify that. I do agree with Jesse, because, listen, that is absolutely true. The best way to deal with the bully is exactly what he said. But I want to clarify my comment and why I was agreeing with Rick. I feel prophetically that it's about timing, and it's also about strategy. I really, really feel that. I think we do need to retaliate. I think we need to show them that we are America. We're not to be pushed around. Listen, the blood of our soldiers are not cheap, and we are not going to allow them to think so. What I'm talking about is, for whatever reason, I feel like there is a wisdom and there is a strategy and a timing, and I think we do need to do something, but we can't fall into their hands. It's almost like they're dangling something, and there is a wisdom and a strategy, and if we play it right and we retaliate in the right time with the right strategy, it is going to deeply, deeply send a message to these people that think that they can push our country around.
All right, Rick, let me give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a time to slap the bully. I just think Hank's right. The timing has to be incredibly careful. There's a big difference if they were attacking New Orleans or Dripping Springs than what they're doing right now. And there's no question we need to stand up for our troops, all of those good things. But there's a big difference in having a confused, weak, terrible White House right now at the hand when responding to this kind of thing. And it can escalate completely out of control without our ability to handle it well. I mean, even when we had a good hand on the wheel in Ronald Reagan, when several hundred Marines were killed in Beirut, he made the strategic decision to pull out and to not stay and fight. Now, I don't know all the intel or all the things that are going on, but I think Hank's on to something in terms of it's almost like, the Chihuahua's nipping at the heels, and they're trying to tempt us into a fight that, frankly, right now we don't need to be in. Our focus needs to be on our border right now and defending Israel. And I realize that's in the same region, and that's why I say I don't know all the intel and how it all plays together. Man, I just want to put caution out there and say if you escalate this in the next 12 months with Joe Biden at the helm, we could be in for some real defeats as a nation, because we are, frankly, weak as a nation right now in terms of what they've done to us over the last 3 years. Our military is in trouble right now, and we need some time to rebuild that, and we need somebody like Trump at the helm to clean out those lousy woke generals and put in some good, strong, godly, wonderful American flag-waving men and women to lead this country again. So I just have to say caution and patience and restraint at this point, and be careful how we respond.
Well, and this is, let me go back to we've heard this before on this program. Elections have consequences. And what you're looking at here with Joe Biden is a consequence. I understand what Rick is saying. And that's a consequence of a weak military, and the consequence of telling soldiers they have to get the backs or they'll be removed or discharged. That's a consequence. This is why we're here. I cannot think of any better example of why FlashPoint is here, the Victory Channel is here, Victory News, why we're here is because this is so important. It may not be that it wasn't that way the first day Joe Biden was in office, but it sure got that way. We've talked about energy. Day one, he cut 11,000 jobs and stopped the pipeline. I mean, we know what happened day one, but this is now, here we are going into 3 years, into the final year. And this is why an election's so important. You and I have to understand the importance. This is why you cannot stay home and say, well, I don't like Trump, so I'm just not going to vote. You can't do that, because what you just voted was for the other side. And that's why you and I can't do that. We do not have the luxury. We stand on the shoulders of all those men and women who have fought from the Revolutionary War through Vietnam and every war around there, World War II, World War I. Listen, if we do that, we're spitting in their face. You vote, and you vote the right way. And to quote Jesse Duplantis, I'm Gene Bailey, and that's my statement. All right, let's move along to the border. Speaking of the border, y'all got me all wound up here. All right, this is Laura Ingraham talking to Governor Dan Patrick. Look, if I know what y'all are thinking, you want to move to Texas, I don't blame you. This is what we're doing. Watch this.
This is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Governor, I've already gotten text messages from people who are concerned, and hearing that this is just what Biden wants. He wants something to trigger something that will end up, ending up in some type of violence involving states versus the federal government. Are you concerned about that, given how this is changing?
I'm not concerned, Laura. The biggest mistake the Biden administration could make
would be confronting law enforcement or our military, our National Guard, at our border, at this park, when we're actually doing the job that the American people want. So if they come down and create a situation, all of America already knows now, they will clearly see that the Democrats are willing to take on a state that is operating under our constitutional right to protect our people and protect this country. I don't think even Biden will make that mistake. We're not looking for a confrontation. We're looking for them to do their damn job and protect the lives of Texans and Americans and protect the borders in this country. And for every person that's died of a fentanyl overdose, for every person that's been murdered by MS-13, for every law enforcement officer who's been killed in the line of duty because these people across the border, that death is on the hands of Joe Biden and this administration and his policies on the border. All right, so let me go to you, Jesse. Out of that, Texas is standing up. I think, I must say, full disclosure, I think it's a little late for the governor here to finally be standing up. But, however, I'm glad he is. Jesse, I want to get your comment there.
Well, I'm so glad that Governor Abbott had the guts to stand up for it. There was a man who became a president. He was our third president. That was Thomas Jefferson. One thing Jefferson believed in was state rights. Now, I really believe we need to listen to the federal government because that's our highest seat of government. That's common sense. But when they won't act, when they won't do anything, so you just let somebody run over in the state, and you see, so I think Governor Abbott is doing right. Now, I would hate to see the National Guard fighting our own troops. That would be ridiculous. That's a civil war, and I'm not talking about that. But I think somebody needs to get to Washington and sit down and to stop this invasion, because this is not migration. This is an invasion, and for some reason, and I think the reason why they're allowing it to happen, because see, if they give these people enough little money, enough of that, then when voting comes, they'll stay in power. And I've learned something about people that love power. They'll do anything to keep it. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not looking to blow up anything, but I don't know how old Brother Hank is or how old Rick is and everything. But my era was the Vietnam era, and they always told us that we knew what to do, but they wouldn't let us do it. You see, we knew where to bomb, we knew what to hit, and with the Vietnam War, it was a total mishap, a complete mishap, and 56 or 58,000 people died, and several of my friends died, and I was drafted myself, and all the different things. My point is this, you see, when you know what to do, quit talking about what you know what to do, and that's what Governor Abbott did. He quit talking, and he started doing something. And, of course, that caused all kind of havoc over there in Washington, D.C. And I'm not trying to come against the government. I'm proud to be American. I want to be American. But when people won't stand up for it, you're just going to let somebody come into your house and blow your kids away? And well, you can't do that, because we got to be nice. Nice, nothing. You see what I'm saying? The Bible says the violent take it by force. So I'm not afraid of violence like a lot of people are. I don't want any of it. I'd rather have a peace talk. But I mean, if people won't listen, and the only thing they understand is that, then I think what Governor Abbott is doing is protecting Texas. Actually, he's protecting America. Because if they'll do it in Texas, why not go to Washington, D.C. and do it? Let's see what happens when that goes over there. You see what I'm saying? So it's time for us to stand up and be Americans. Not Democrats, not Republicans, not independents, not any of that junk. Americans. You see what I'm saying? That's why, President Reagan said that, he won't say anything bad about a Republican, things of that nature. I mean, we can agree to disagree. But if you keep letting the devil stay in your camp, I'm telling you, he's going to infect everything. So you have to do something. You want to do what God did? Do what God did in Noah's days. He said, man has corrupted himself. He got rid of the corruption in the statement. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not looking to hurt nobody. I don't want people to misunderstand me. But let me tell you something. I know our military is not where it should be, but our weapons are. You see, and that's what we need to understand. That's what these people, that's all they understand is violence. They're jumping all over Netanyahu to stop that war. And I'm sure how dumb people are. You got people standing up in the streets in Israel saying, let's do this and let's do that. These people will kill every one of those people that are standing up against Netanyahu in Tel Aviv. They're out to kill Jews. Well, these people are out to kill us. They've proven it. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I mean. I don't want to sound like a radical, but let me tell you something. Vietnam would have won. We'd have won if they let us do what we wanted to do.
That's
but
true.
we had four-star generals like Westmoreland and different people, and he was getting dictates from others, and we couldn't do
That's
it.
right.
Now 58,000 people are in the grave. What about their families? What about their children? Come on, I mean, we have to do something. Am I too radical? Tell me, guys, because I mean, I know how to receive, but I know how to deal with something when there's no other choice but to do what you have to do.
Well, I don't think you're too radical. I think America is finally at the point where they're going, now wait a minute. there's a line and you've crossed it. Now I'm going to have to do something. And I believe that's, I think what you're seeing is exactly that played out at the border. Rick, you saw, so we've got Abbott down there at the border. He's putting up razor wire. We got all these states saying they're going to support it. We got Kristi Noem sending razor wire from Dakota down here, which is great to see unity for once among states and among governors. But how does this, I'm really curious, how is this going to, there's no easy way for this to get settled, because now the federal government's got to prove they're big and they're the federal government. Abbott can't back down. If he backs down, Texas will run him out of town. There's a, to me, there doesn't seem to be a win-win. It's just going to get inflamed. I'm interested to hear what you think.
Well, I think there is an easy way for this to be resolved, and that is that the law is followed, that we're once again a nation of laws, and that we not only allow Texas, but we convince the feds to actually implement the law. Don't have to make up a new law. Don't have to pass anything new. Don't have to appropriate any additional money. Just do what the law says to do, which is that when the federal government, when they send the Border Patrol within 25 miles of the border, it is specifically for the purpose of preventing the entry of illegal aliens. That's, of course, not what they've been doing, but I do think they have to back down and say that that's what they're going to do. And Brother Jesse, I agree with every word you just said about the border. I think you are spot on, and I think this is, Gene, you're right. This is a moment where the whole nation feels it. Did you notice how quickly 25 governors jumped on board and said, we stand with Texas. We're with Greg Abbott. I think the best thing he could do, keep putting the wire up. The Supreme Court decision was not even a real decision. It just literally took away the injunction that the Fifth Circuit had given that said that the federal government could not cut the wire. It says nothing about how much wire Texas can put up. Doesn't say Texas has to take anything down. So I think just like Greg Abbott's doing, keep putting the wire up. And Jesse's right. He finally stopped talking. He was all hat, no cattle. Now he's cattle now, baby. He's actually doing what we've been trying to get him to do for years, and the nation is loving him for it. And I think he should put all that wire up, and he ought to wheel himself out there and literally he himself be right there between the federal government and that wire and say, come and take it. That would be the Texas thing to do, and I think there's no way that the Biden administration would do that, and the rest of the country will stand with Texas, and they will eventually back down. Even if they're not willing to enforce the law, they'll finally back off and let Texas do it. But this thing still hasn't even been heard by the Fifth Circuit, so we're still going to actually go to the appeal February 7th, and then it'll eventually get to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, we got the standoff, and I'm proud of Governor Abbott for what he's doing, and y'all know I've been a very vocal critic of Governor Abbott. Props where they're due. He's doing a great job on it right now.
All right, so let me show you. I don't know why you're saying all that, Rick, because Karine Jean-Pierre says Biden's been doing this all along. He's always been that way. Watch.
Yeah.
The first day of his administration, the president took this issue very seriously. He put forth a comprehensive piece of legislation to deal with what's happening with the immigration. You don't get to decide, but you don't get to decide what I say and what I don't say. Either you hear me out, or we can, I'll see you on Wednesday. Totally up to you. Totally up to you.
I just want to know if he means
all right. Okay. He means what he says. Not going to go into details here. Here's the reality. The immigration system is broken. It's been broken for decades, even in the last administration. The president introduced this piece of legislation 3 years ago. House Republicans got in the way. They refused to do anything about it.
Okay, Pastor Hank, that is a softball. So, Pastor Hank Kuhneman, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't know how that lady can get up there and continually lie and spin and not have a conscience. I mean, my goodness. I mean, what in the world is she saying, first of all, and what world is she living in? So it's very obvious. They lied, they spin. But I want to go back to something that Jesse said, and that is about the strength of the American spirit. If you really look at the history of our country, the history of our great military, and those that were part of the military, our soldiers, our veterans, you know, they have fought and they have given everything. But then something kind of shifted towards Vietnam, where, to Jesse's point, they began to be demanded to go and to risk their life, give their all for their country, but yet they weren't able to finish the job. They were not able to really go and accomplish what they needed to do. They were caught in the crosshairs of corrupt politicians and politics that governed these wars. And America needs to have a certain kick backside attitude again, to Jesse's point. And that's what you're seeing with Governor Abbott. And I like what Rick said. I think Governor Abbott needs to go right there to the border. He needs to say, you know what? I'm going to get in the middle of all of this, and we are going to stand as a united country, because every single state has a border. And what's happening in Texas is a representation of what we, the people of the United States, deserve, and that is protection. And also, I believe something, and that is this, Pastor Gene. An example, Texas is standing up for our Constitution. They're standing up for what is rightfully our rights as United States citizens, and that is to have our borders closed, protected, and also to know who's crossing our borders. But I wanted to say this last thing. What's irony to me is the same administration that is saying this about the barbed wire. Aren't they the same administration that has barbed wire that they immediately put up when the election integrity was brought into question back in 2020? I heard there's barbed wire all around the White House. Whoa, what's that all about? But yet they can go down and tell Texas what to do with their barbed wire. It doesn't make sense. And I think Texas, your Texas, stand up and be an example for the rest of our country.
All right, let me show you speaking of what's going on over the border, let me show you this from the Border Patrol Chief. Over the weekend, Tucson sector agents apprehended 2 migrants for unlawful entry, one for second-degree murder that he's already wanted, and attempted murder, and the other for endangering the welfare of a child. Both face federal prosecution. Look at this other one. USBP Border Patrol in Del Rio and Rio Grande nabbed 2 child sex offenders with prior felony convictions. This just happened. These subjects were caught trying to re-enter the U.S. illegally. Agents out on patrol is what stopped them from getting to your community. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly where we are. We must not sit back and just take a lackadaisical attitude. We must get involved. So I know you're listening. I know you're listening to me. We got so much more. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about the border. And I got a quote to you from Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom. And I'm trying really hard not to laugh. You don't want to miss any of it. Coming up right after the break.
2024 is here, and the FlashPoint Live Rescue America Tour is launching its first campaign on February 8th through the 9th. Join Gene Bailey and the FlashPoint Live team with Andrew Womack at Charis Bible College in Colorado Springs, Colorado. In 2024, we're raising the banner of faith across America to take our nation back. Join us on February 8th through the 9th at Charis Bible College. Register today at 2024flashpoint.live.
We walk by faith when times are good. We walk by faith when times are terrible. No person that lives by faith has to change his or her lifestyle because of the times.
You will bring honor to God when you increase in your fruitfulness. God has so much more in store for you than what you've already experienced.
Join us for the Branson Victory Campaign with Kenneth Copeland and Jerry Savelle, April 4th through the 6th. Register at kcm.org/Branson today.
And we're back, second half of FlashPoint. Let me get right into my next guest. Brylan Hollihan is the 17-year-old conservative commentator who founded the Truth Gazette and is currently serving as the co-chair of the RNC's Youth Advisory Council. Welcome back to the show, Brylan. Good to have you back.
Gene, happy Monday. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
All right, so Brian, I want you on is because you're like, younger, not much younger, just okay. Yeah, you're a lot younger. All right, so I want to understand. You've got a handle on the youth in America. So let's see, what is the youth? Let me get your take on all of this with the border. Why is it so many people could care less about the border that are in your age group?
Well, first of all, Gene, let me just say, God bless the Texas National Guard and God bless Greg Abbott. They are really, truly the last line of defense protecting our nation, and they're holding the line, as your guest just talked about. Gene, our country's under attack, and there's an active invasion at our southern border. Today's the ruling last week by the Supreme Court was tone deaf. It was disappointing. We had 5 justices who are protected by 24/7 taxpayer-funded security, and they ruled against Texas using its own personal right to defend its citizens by putting up that razor wire. There wouldn't be a need for this razor wire by the Texas government if Joe Biden would untie the hands of our Border Patrol, acknowledge the deadly assault on our border, and secure it. Gene, since Biden took office back in 2021, there have been 8 million border crossings. 8 million. Those are 8 million undocumented immigrants spread out across our country. That's more than the entire population of the state of Washington, about the same size as the population of the state of Virginia. That's insanity. It must be stopped. My generation's waking up, and we're going to remember this when we go to the ballot box to vote for the first time this upcoming November. Yeah, come on. All right, so let me ask you this question. I want to make sure I get to this. You wrote right there on the Truth Gazette this article on the Vivek lesson. What does the GOP need to learn from Ramaswamy on the Gen Z? Obviously he's out of the race, so it's not about voting for him or endorsing him. But I want to know, what is it that you think we need to learn from that whole little experience? Yeah, well, let's just take a second to talk about Vivek, Greg, or Gene. As you said, he's out of this race, but we've still got a lot we can learn from him. How did he go from being a no-name in politics to a potential vice presidential candidate in less than a year? I realized from my first sit-down interview with him that he actually truly wanted to bring change to the party. He truly wanted to abolish a handful of these government agencies, and he had a plan to do so when I pressed him on it in our interview. He didn't just have TV talking points, Gene. He was genuine. He was real, and that's what my generation was won over by. All we've known our whole lives is fake. We've got fake Instagram pictures, fake people in our lives, fake promises from our leaders. But Vivek was different. He listened. He told it like it was. He had real ideas. And the main thing that our party needs to listen to is to use social media to harness his message, to get it directly to my generation. And, well, it works. While his opponents were on traditional cable, getting their message out to my parents and my grandparents, he was on TikTok getting his message out to us. So even though he's out of this race, even though his candidacy for president is over, the Republican Party needs to heed his warning, needs to use his message to win my generation at the ballot box this November. And you showed the article there. Your audience can go to thetruthgazette.com/gazettes to read the full thing now. All right. So I know people are at home sitting there looking at you going, boy, this guy's 17. But you really got involved in this at 11 years old. Bring people up to speed on your history at 11. Yes, sir, absolutely. So I first got interested in politics actually even earlier than that, at the age of 10. I was in 4th grade at the time watching the 2016 presidential election. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. This is interesting. There's a lot of craziness going on in the country, but the adults are going to handle it. I don't have to worry about it right now. Well, I gave it about a year. And the next year, the summer of 2017, I turned 11. And it was the summer before my 5th grade year. I was coming into middle school, and I said, well, the adults haven't done anything yet. There's still a lot of craziness going on in the country. So if the adults were going to do something, I was going to step up and do it for them. And so I founded the Truth Gazette, a conservative news organization, to fight the fake news media. And that's what I've been doing ever since then. We've grown it. I'm now 17. I'll be turning 18 this summer, just in time to vote for the very first time, one of the most important elections in our nation's history. Anybody watching right now, you can go on social media. I'm at Brylan Hollihan, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We've grown it from just a news site where I was just writing articles to, as I just mentioned, I still write articles. I've got a podcast now. And we've really grown it out. But as you mentioned in your intro, the cool thing I get to do now, it's my favorite thing, is co-chair the RNC's Youth Council. So this time last year, there was no RNC Youth Advisory Council. The DNC's had one since 2005, so we're about 20 years behind them. And finally, our party's waking up and accepting my generation because we're going to be the largest voting bloc this upcoming election. So I'll be flying out to Nevada tomorrow to help with their primary this upcoming week, to speak directly with youth voters, to talk to them about how they should be voting for President Trump, who will be the nominee for our party as we get ready to beat Joe Biden. And I think it's 281 days. I think that's the countdown, Gene.
All right, let me bring you in, Rick Green. This is why you're so involved with Patriot Academy. Speak to about Brylan here. What do you think about this young man?
Well, just watching and listening to him, man, that ought to give hope to everybody watching right now tonight. God's raising up a remnant. There's sharp young people out there that God has given the talent and the gifts necessary and the convictions necessary to basically be the Navy SEALs of civics, the tip of the spear to bring our nation back. And clearly he represents that. I get to see this year round with Patriot Academy and other young people just like him that are leading the way in their communities all across this nation. And Brylan, you're not familiar with me probably, but I'm going to offer you a full ride scholarship to come spend a week with me at the Texas Capitol next summer if you want. I know you're busy and you got a lot going on. I'm also going to challenge you right now on national television to surround yourself with good, godly counsel, because you are incredibly effective at a young age, and the enemy's going to try to take you out. So get good, godly men and women around you. Get your wise old men group that can keep you grounded and humble so that you can help us save this country. I'm impressed with you, brother. I want to see you at Patriot Academy.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
All right. So let me go. I need to go to this. I want to go to this Israeli ambassador today. I sat down with former Israeli ambassador David Friedman. I asked him I'm not able to play the whole interview, but I want to play a segment of what he had to say. Now, remember, Ambassador Friedman was the Israeli ambassador when Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem. All right, if you've heard that name before, that's where it is. Let me show you now my interview with Ambassador Friedman. Watch. Ambassador Friedman, thank you for joining FlashPoint tonight.
Gene, thanks. Great to be with you.
Yeah. So, Ambassador, let me start off with what's on the hearts and minds of our viewers. Is when you look at the Biden administration and their policies in the Middle East, what do you think of that?
Well, look, they started when the war started on October 7th. They offered, I think, some of the right gestures, but I was always worried that it would conflict with their politics, right, with their base, and unfortunately, that's where things have gone. So, in the last few weeks, look, they're making references to Israel engaging in indiscriminate bombing.
Right.
Just not true, right? They're pushing this, I think, ridiculous notion of a two-state solution. I mean, I don't think anybody in Israel right now is looking for a two-state solution. And frankly, they shouldn't be, because that second state would be a terrorist state run by some of the worst people on earth. And then, he's making these references to Israel engaging in low-intensity combat, which... I'm not sure what it means. But it's a message to Israel that Israel takes seriously, because Israel values that relationship so much. Sure. And I think Israel actually is doing things against their own interest. I mean, just recently, they were laying explosives in an empty building, and they got hit by an RPG, and it triggered a chain reaction, and 21 Israeli soldiers died. Unfortunately, that's more than 10% of the entire loss that Israel's experienced since the war began. It's not the way to fight a war, and I know Biden doesn't know how to fight a war, and Blinken and they've never fought a war. Let Israel fight the war. Let them fight their war and let them win their war. The Palestinians have just voted, in a bunch of polls. 90% of them support Hamas and the barbaric attacks that they inflicted upon innocent Israeli civilians. So, if you're voting for a two-state solution, what you're really voting for is the demise of Israel and the replacement of Israel with a terrorist state. That's what it's going to be. And I don't think they really appreciate that. And or if they do, obviously they're not friends of Israel.
No. It's been shocking here in America to see the universities come out with pro-Palestinian from the river to the sea. I mean, that's been shocking to most of the people that watch our program because of our stand with Israel. What does that say? Now, I know you were at Columbia and NYU, but what does that say about our education system?
Oh, it's failed. It says that our education system has failed. It says that high marks on the SATs are not indicative by any metric of real intelligence. I mean, these people are siding with the worst people on earth.
Right.
You know, they claim that they want to protect women, but they're celebrating rapists. They claim they want to protect children. They're celebrating people who behead and burn children. They're celebrating gay and transgender. They're standing with people who summarily execute them.
Right.
So there's a level of ignorance here which is breathtaking. And to be that ignorant and go to Harvard or Columbia or NYU tells you that these institutions have failed. And, you know, I'm sure you saw the clip of Elise Stefanik,
right.
you know, questioning those three horrible, you know, presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn. 1 billion people watch that film to show. It just shows you how much people are disgusted with elite education right now. And these are potentially the future leaders of America. So we got to get our arms around this quickly before this, you know, is extrapolated into leadership that will just destroy America.
When you see everything that's happened since October 7th, what is it that you think the American public needs to understand about that attack? What has not been relayed properly? What do we need to take from that?
Well, the first thing is that there has been an excessive amount of denial, again, on college campuses and in serious people who claim to be serious reporters. There's been denial about what actually happened. I mean, look what happened. I mean, you know, 1,200 innocent souls were murdered and raped and kidnapped and brutalized, and 136 are still being held captive underground. They don't know if it's day or night. I mean, they're you know, under circumstances that, you know, the worst possible, you know, living conditions. And so that's them. I don't think people really understand the level of the brutality. The second thing they don't understand is that, you know, Israel gave away Gaza in 2006, right? They left. There's not a single Jew living in Gaza. There's not a single Israeli soldier, you know, on the ground in Gaza as of October 6th of 2007. So what happened? Israel gave this land to the Palestinians. They gave them a land, by the way, which was already cultivated, and there was a lot of agriculture and a lot of, you know, commerce going on. They said, here, take it, you know, and you're going to get some financial aid from the world. Take it, run with it. You're on a very long coast along the Mediterranean, facing west. It's the best view. You know, you got to watch the sunset at night. Here's this beautiful land. Make something of it. And they took all the money, and they built 350 miles of underground terror tunnels, and they built rockets, and they built bombs, and they neglected their people. And yet, you know, this is who the Palestinians voted for, and this is who they still support.
Why did the Palestinians so support Hamas?
Well, you know, you got to, I think, start with the educational system among the Palestinians. By the way, most of which is funded by the United Nations. Now, here's a typical, you know, fourth grade class play in Gaza. Half the kids dress up as Jews, you know, with, you know, they put on like hook noses, you know, and they put on, you know, religious garb and everything. And they stand on one side of the room. The other half are given, you know, military uniforms, fake machine guns, keffiyehs. And then the play is the Palestinians shoot the Jews lie down dead, and the parents get up and applaud. Okay, that's, in a nutshell, what these kids are being taught. And as long as that's what's being taught, there is no hope for anything but the most brutal of conflicts. I mean, these are people who, you know, brutalized, you know, women and then took pictures of it, sent it home to their families, and their families were proud of them. Imagine that. So it's a very dark place there. The Palestinians have been taught to hate for a generation, and until that cycle is broken, and I think it will take Israel to take control over all the territory and kind of weed out and rebuild the educational system. Until that happens, I'm not optimistic.
Yeah. You know, even here in Houston, and in the state that we're living in, we're very much a huge pro-Palestinian group doing that training. What does that say to you about America and their stand? Where have we gone off the rails?
Look, we have become, I think, untethered from the Judeo-Christian values that made America a great country, that our founders relied upon. You know, these values, you know, stood the test of time for hundreds of years, and I think brought out the best in American society, made America the envy of the world and the greatest country on earth, and a very blessed country by God, and I think they're connected. You know, we mock religion, we vilify it. We think people, you know, who believe in God should wear, you know, tinfoil hats, and, you know, that they're outside the mainstream. This is dangerous. And on top of that, we've allowed into our country millions of people, millions of young males of Middle Eastern, origin, who I'm sure are being radicalized here, and we don't have a handle on it. And I pray to God we don't pay a price for it. I mean, we're in a very precarious position right now. And it's, I think, only through faith that we will climb out of this abyss.
All right, so as we wrap up, a dossier obtained by the New York Times recently just revealed a dozen UN relief workers that actually participated in the Hamas attacks, killings, kidnappings on October 7th. What do you know about that, and how should the U.S. really respond to this?
Well, I knew about it, when I was ambassador, and it's, maybe they caught 12, but, it's hundreds. Okay, hundreds of Hamas sympathizers within this organization called UNRWA, right, which is funded by the UN. By the way, the primary donor is America. Now, in the Trump administration, we figured this out a year or two into our administration. We cut off all the funding. And there was no funding by America of UNRWA for 2 years, the last two and a half years. Biden comes in, turns the money back on. And where does it go? It goes, again, to put on those plays we talked about, and it goes to, help these workers commit atrocities against Jewish people. They're cutting it off now, but, what do they say? The barn door was already opened and the horse already left. It's too little, too late.
Do you see things turning in America?
I think people understand that we've taken a wrong turn over the last 3 years. And I think one sign, Trump's popularity, I think, tells me that people are looking to return to common sense and to more traditional values.
Ambassador, thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Pleasure. Great to be with you.
All right, so you're going to see the rest of that interview. We're going to send it out in the email here soon. That's just a little piece of it I wanted you to hear. So, Jesse, you heard Ambassador Friedman talk about the fact, what we heard from the UN, that about a dozen. He said there's hundreds, and then there's reports later today that said there was over 1,000 that were working with Hamas. What is going on at the UN?
Well, the UN to me is just a farce. You see, it hadn't become what it's supposed to be, was to help people. It's become a political agenda. You see what I'm saying? And things of that nature. Now, we're funding people that wants to kill babies. Now, how dumb is that? See, now, you can't change everything in the world unless, unless it can be done through education, like what that ambassador was saying, think about that. So all a child knows is that a Jewish person is terrible, so you kill. You see, it's kind of like the Holocaust. It's like the Germans when they fought the Jews. They called them Juden rats. And nobody gets mad when you kill a rat in your house because it's a rat, or it's a mouse. Well, they made people a rat, so they don't feel bad killing them. And that's how Hitler and his regimes did all what they did. Now, and I think the UN needs to get out of America. Just that simple, because they've wasted money, they're wasting time, and it's all political agendas. And I understand that everybody's a right to believe what they want to believe because this is America. But if we are the biggest donors to it, my Lord, they ought to at least be listening to us. But when you got one president to do this and another president to do that, you got problems. Who's running this country now really is everything's done through the courts. We can see that. Just go to the courts. How can 3 Supreme Court justices in Colorado take the man off and charge him for trying to cause a civil war, and he's never been charged? Now, how dumb can you be? But you see, common sense is not very common to people, and the only way to stop it is through a Judeo-Christian ethic. And getting people born again and saved. You get people saved, it changes that soul trim, the mind, the will, and the emotion. But you're not going to do it being churchy. You see?
No, thank you.
Churchy don't work. See what I'm saying? It doesn't work. You got to have a real touch from God Almighty, from the top to the bottom. You see, I've learned something. If you want to go in a country and change a country, instead of going in and feed the lower people, and you need to feed them, you start with the president, get him saved, get the council, and it'll all trickle down. They call it trickle-down economics, but that can literally happen if it's done right. I'm just sad to hear that, how anybody can just do that and stand up for Hamas.
Right.
And even the president, did you hear him? They were screaming at him when he was trying to talk the other day, and, with their flags. If you want to be a part of America and you cross that border here, and, then you ought to adopt what we believe. But if our educational system, if we take Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Duke and NYU and just make them the gods that's going to be the next senators and congressmen and presidents, well, just because they're smart don't mean they're smart. You see what I'm saying? It takes some common sense to do some wonderful things and to change things. About the immigration system, it's not broken. We don't need no legislation. We just need to enforce what's already on the books. All you got to do is enforce the laws that are already on the book. Don't need no legislation. Don't need any of that. See, just do what's already there. But you know, common sense does not dictate. They don't have common sense. They just want another shot, you know, another thing for political expediency and things of that nature.
Sure.
I'd get the UN out of America. That's what I would do.
Well, I think we all agree with that one. All right, so listen, Jesse talked about something that I want to make sure you understand. You've heard me say this before, whether at an event or here on the program. America's problem is not political. We have a spiritual problem that the politics will have to follow suit. And you say, well, Gene, how can you say something? Great, it's history. History in the Welsh revival. Yes, in Wales. Guess what? The economy was in the toilet. They were in the middle of election season. Corruption was at an all-time high. Crime was at an all-time high. They had an outpouring, a revival that happened, an outpouring of God. Guess what? They forgot the elections. The police didn't have anything to do, so they came to the meetings. They just decided no more elections, and crime was at zero. Listen, this is why FlashPoint events this year is going to be different. Now, we're not going to stop talking about politics. We're not going to stop talking about current events and what's going on. You're going to see that on the first night. But on that second night, you better get ready, because I'm telling you, we're bringing the fire of God into the house. And if you don't like that, just sit and watch and see what God does, because we are going to show you the answer to the problem. Is it getting saved? Yes. Is it getting healed? Yes. Is it understanding who you are in Christ? Absolutely, all of those things. That's why you need to be at a FlashPoint event coming up. Colorado's the next one, and then Tulsa. You don't want to miss a minute of it. It's right there, 2024, flashpoint.live. Join us, because we're going to see revival in America. But we're not stopping there at revival. We're going to see a reformation. All right, Pastor Hank, I want to give you a chance to comment.
Well, I think we're in a very important time right now in the earth. Jesus said that fear would dominate the hearts of many because of the things that they see coming on the earth. But Jesus said in Luke 21, he said, look up, because your redemption draweth nigh. And something that we have to remember as you're looking at these borders, you listen to the ambassador, you listen to the young man, the wisdom that came out of him and all of this and the conditions that are going on. We cannot forget that there is a God who is Lord of all, Yeshua, Jesus. He is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And when we side with him, it activates his authority. It activates his kingdom to begin to come and to reign and to rule. And here's the thing, never ever forget, no matter what's happening in the earth, if we will include God, things miraculously will turn around. And this is what's going to happen with the United States. It's what's going to happen with Israel. God, according to Ezekiel 38, is going to magnify himself in the sight of all the nations. You can never exclude the supernatural component of God. When you include it, you will see reform, you'll see revival, and you will see something begin to happen that doesn't make sense to the reporters and all the other things. It's God moving upon man, God moving upon the earth, and that's what he's doing, resetting.
Yeah, amen. All right, Rick, I want to give you a chance to comment here as we get ready to go out. Go ahead and take a minute.
Yeah, first of all, great interview with the ambassador, man. I thought that was fantastic. I had not seen one like that with him. And I think what he hit on and what Jesse hit on and what Hank just closed it with, it all comes back to moral clarity and knowing right from wrong. Notice how the ambassador talked about the Judeo-Christian foundation of the nation. And then when we had that, we knew right from wrong. We didn't have kids marching for Hamas and the murdering of children. So just coming back to that biblical worldview, biblical civics, the idea that there's a right and wrong wrong, and we know what's right and wrong from God's word. And then the common sense that Jesse's talking about, man, that's that wisdom from the Bible that comes from the fear of the Lord. So I just think that was a great way that these guys wrapped up what the ambassador was saying, and it shows you right there in front of us the solution. Coming back to that biblical foundation, getting the answers from God's word, studying, being saturated in God's word, and then going out there in the culture and living out those truths. That's the moral clarity. And you remember Donald Trump had that moral clarity. As soon as he watched the Palestinian Authority, he saw that money going to them in 2017. As soon as he came into office, he said, that's wrong. They're murdering Jews. Of course, we're not going to give them money anymore. We don't have moral clarity in the White House right now, and we need to restore it. But it begins with us making sure we got our mind saturated in God's word and then voting with that biblical worldview. That's what it's going to take to restore that common sense that Jesse's talking about.
So true. Well, I want to thank all my guests tonight. Of course, Pastor Hank, Rick, Brother Jesse, and of course, Brylan Holland, and of course, our good friend, the Israeli ambassador, David Friedman. All right, so you may be wondering, can you guys stand that strong? How can you stand? I'm concerned. Listen, that's what this network is all about. That's what this show is all about. That's what this ministry is all about, is to equip you with the tools you need to be able to stand strong in the days that we're living in. Let me pray real quick. Father, I thank you for each person watching tonight, that they turn their hearts to you. They turn their hearts to your word and understand who you really are and what you've created us to be, that we can stand valiantly in these times. In Jesus' name, amen. Look, there's so much we didn't get to. I didn't get to talk about all the truckers heading to the border. I didn't get to talk. Tomorrow night we'll hit the Biden and Gavin Newsom clip. It's funny, but listen, tomorrow night you got a special guest host. Y'all show up, because who knows what my host Lance Wallnau will do tomorrow night. This will be fun. His guests are Pastor Hank Kuhneman, Rick Green, and Floyd Brown. Listen, show up. Let them know you're there. Thank you for watching, as always. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Remember, make sure you're engaged, make sure you're in the Word, and make sure you don't ever turn away from FlashPoint. We'll see you next time.